Thank you.
Passes. All right, with that, we'll move to 15.1. This is out of Public Services and Revenue Administration. It's also an informational item on the 2018 general election, and both Andy and Janelle are going to come up and tell us a little bit about where we are in the process. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Here, as you'd mentioned, to give a brief update about our preparations for the election. I noticed it's come up on just about every other agenda item as well today. But we wanted to talk about what we're up to. So let's start with volume. That's the first question that most people ask me. This year, as you can see on the slide, this is as a midterm election. We see somewhat reduced volume over presidential elections. Even more interesting is that the absentee volume continues to increase. As of 8:20 this morning, countywide, we had issued 33,266 absentee ballots. So we're fairly confident once early voting begins, the deposit directly into the ballot box method, that our 60,000 absentee vote estimate will hold up. We don't yet know what the overall turnout is going to be for in-person voting on election day. We'll talk about that shortly after the election. But one thing that's really interesting and is not present on this is that in 2002, the first bit of data that you see on here, county voter registration was actually in the 190,000s. And we recently passed 260,000, which exacerbates the turnout that's occurring here. All right, a little bit about election security. There's been a lot of news stories and hype about election security. We wanted to talk about some facts here real briefly, and that's that the elections hardware is completely separate from the county hardware network. There is no access to that on the county's network. And in addition to that, there is no remote access as well. Vendors do not have access to our hardware. In fact, that software doesn't exist on the county's election servers. It's actually only accessible by a couple of election staff members, and that's it. An election staff, in addition to using separate credentials for the election hardware, when we post election results on election night, they use separate credentials as well to make sure that we're not vulnerable from hacking or any sort of activity when using the website and the SharePoint there.
We were highlighted, or not highlighted, mentioned in one of the news stories last night where they were pitching dual authorization. Is that something I should be concerned about, that Dakota County is not dual authorizing?
No, the reality is that we do use a form of multi-factor authentication on our election hardware, in that you have to have physical access to the server and credentials to get onto the machine. So we are actually using multi-factor authentication to access that space.
So they unfairly called us out.
It was not quite the way it was portrayed.
Oh, that was nice.
Thank you. Okay. So we're pretty busy in preparing for this. When we conducted our biennial election administrator training, which is required by Minnesota rules to train administrators for every jurisdiction in the county, we did a particular emphasis this year on chain of custody security. We've been seeing this coming for a while, so we emphasize that in our training. We also run mock election training, mock election sessions where we actually practice the activities that we have people performing on election day. And then we brought up the vendor for some more electronic poll book train the trainer sessions. Just the more contact folks have with this stuff, the better they do. And we're always available for practice sessions. If anyone was to call us with questions and we were to become suspicious about their ability, concerned about their ability, or had wanted to be available for them, we'd say, hey, come on in. We've got a few laying around. We'll show you what we do. So in addition, like I said, we added some additional training. When I gave an election update shortly after the primary, I'd mentioned that we'd had some connectivity issues with hardware that we were using in these particular locations in the county. These weren't occurring in the cities per se, but when they were using the equipment that we had provided in their polling places, we had some connectivity issues where I talked about how if you were close to the skylight, you could connect with the server. However, if you were over by the check-in tables, you could actually check in voters. We've resolved those issues. We worked with Verizon and Knowing to increase the signal strength and to procure some better hardware that should have better connectivity at those locations. In addition, we've also jammed more of our training resources onto the poll book. So they have this wonderful device, this hardware that they can use. It'd be great if they had a question that they could watch a video to help them with the procedure or some other resources, and so we've done that as well. And then tried to improve some of the functionality for election judges. We're trying to automate basically everything. We'd like it if I mean, we have this iPad device. If it did the voter statistics automatically, we'd take the human element out of it. We're trying to do that sort of thing. So, yeah, if the board has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Any questions? I think our election will be secure. We've done a lot here in Dakota County trying to deal with cyber issues across the spectrum.
So, Madam Chair, I would just add on that question of security and two-factor authentication, that is something that we're moving to generally. I think, as Andy said, it's not directly applicable in the particular case of the election servers and hardware, but we are moving that direction. I just want to add my thanks to the staff. There's been a lot of work and a lot of discussion, and a lot of adjustments to the process and a lot of training and thought going into this election, and we're feeling very well prepared. So thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So just real quick, if you're the average public and you want to get the most recent, up-to-date election results, should you be on the county website or should you be on the Secretary of State's website?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Holberg, the Secretary of State's is the best website because it incorporates entire jurisdictions. For example, if you were looking for the Craig Lewis race, if you look on our website, you're only going to see the Dakota County precincts, of course, but you get the whole state results if you go to the Secretary's website. The main purpose of the county's website is as a backup because we absolutely cannot not display our results. So we maintain the county backup, but really the better reporting's on the state side because they get all the races.
Well, I understand that component. I'm talking about the speed. Which one gets it first? So if you have a race which the jurisdiction does not cross county lines, and you're in Dakota County, whether it's a school board or a city council or whatever, should you be on Secretary of State to have the most recent results or the county's website?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, we always report to ours first. And so our website is ahead by a few minutes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, seeing no further questions, I'm going to take us back to item 8.1. Earlier in the meeting, we authorized the scheduling